Hello, everybody. My name is Drew Dosek, and welcome to Trading the Close. Today, we saw a rapid move up in the markets overnight, and that was mainly on the back of news of Nvidia's earnings was positive, but then also a judge blocked the tariff orders from President Trump, which was alleviating concerns of tariffs moving forward. But the realization quickly set in that this battle is not over yet. There's other ways that this president can enact tariffs up to 150 days on select sectors. So we'll see how this goes forward and works itself through the litigation process. But I beg to say that this sort of tariff discussion is not over. The likelihood that we will continue to fight this in the courts in the near term is high. So let's jump into the data, though, and see what's happening here on the summary page. On the summary page here that you see, we've got the Dow Jones up only 0.12%. NASDAQ is up 0.28%. S&P is basically flat, down 0.07%. U.S. oil did have a little drop today, 1.57%. Gold is up 0.857%, while Bitcoin is facing a little bit of pressure, under $106,000 now on the chart. We'll get into that in a little bit too to display what's going on with Bitcoin. Into the general heat map of the S&P 500, you can see here with a flat day, we've got a lot of greens, and we also have some reds in here. Netflix finally cracking, it's gaining momentum. We'll see if it's going to hold and continue to move down lower. We'll jump into that chart later on. Palantir also down 1%. Oracle down 0.72%. But CRM, Salesforce, down 3.45%. Significant fall there on that stock today. Jumping into the spiders, you see here we did not much today, but just chop around sideways. So this pattern still remains. Resistance is going to be up here at 598.25. Support going to be down here near the top end of the parallel channel, roughly right around 575.46. Now into the 10-minute, though, to understand what was going on today. As I said, we gapped up higher, and then we just sold nearly all morning long, finally then getting a bounce right at 12 noon, taking us up here, and see what's created by this pattern here on the charts. In the 10-minute pattern, we have an inverse head and shoulders pattern. And notice how when price has come up to this neckline, it just hits it, gets rejected, hits it, gets rejected, hits it, gets rejected. That's just all technical analysis. Otherwise, how do you explain how this trend line has held down price, or this area has held down price for so long? It's all in the technical analysis, which can help you understand future movements in charts like this one right here. If this move plays out with the inverse head and shoulders pattern, we're going to be moving right back up here to 593.27. All in all, on the daily chart, we'll still just be chopping around this area, much like this current cycle has predicted. Into the Qs. The Qs did also have a great push up first thing this morning. As you see, we were opening up above resistance, but are now closing back down underneath this resistance line. So this resistance still stays right here at 525.03. Should we break out, next level is 540.81. Into the SMH. SMH also had an attempt to move higher, and this is again on the back of news of Nvidia's earnings. So we were about to break out on SMH, but nope, not so fast. Pulling price action back in. This area has proven to be very contentious for price action moving higher, not only on the spiders, but also on the SMH right here. Into the IWM. Now, this chart is showing some resilience. Notice how we've had this V-shaped recovery right back into this trend line and attacking it. The bad news is we haven't gotten above the trend line, but the good news is we have attacked it now several times. Now, with this being the 5th time of it being hit, the likelihood now shifts for us to break on through the longer that price action stays right up here in the top end of this consolidation. Into Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, guys, I want to bring this to your attention. This is important stuff because Bitcoin is starting to show a little bit of a crack. As I said yesterday, watch where price action closes on Bitcoin at 8 o'clock at night Eastern time to see where that level in the sand is going to be in order to dictate if price action is likely going to at least move down in the near to midterm. Right here on the charts in Bitcoin, you see here, we closed yesterday right here with the low wick being at $106,790, currently trading underneath that mark. So that tells us now that this break of trend is confirmed. We likely will start coming down maybe a little bit more, but also whenever trend lines get broken, oftentimes they like to retrace to that trend line where they broke. So we still could have a little bit more of a push in Bitcoin up here to this trend line, but then once this trend line is tagged, it may be the end of the show for the near to midterm for Bitcoin, as price should then start coming back down. Here, ultimately, I like this $102,000 area for support, followed by the $97,500 area. Into gold. Now, gold is still staying strong as well. Notice the bullish consolidation that's all taking place right here on the top end of this parallel channel. Not much has changed, though, from yesterday. The resistance here is $3,348. Support's going to be right here on the 50% area of this parallel, and then it may coincide with this trend line right around $3,100 on the chart. Into silver. Silver's showing resilient strength right here. That's telling me the likelihood for a push up higher is increasing. Next target, 34.86, as well as this larger target, $38.97. Keep in mind, if price does get up here with silver, it would take quite a while. There will be tests at resistance, pullbacks, but ultimately this pattern right here with the inverse head and shoulders is showing us price should go to $38.97. Into U.S. oil. U.S. oil still struggling underneath this trend line, and it's just chopping sideways, somewhat in middle ground right now. I wouldn't be taking it long, nor would I be taking it short. We'll see how price action develops over the coming days if we start heading down or if we finally break up and confirm above this declining trend line. Into nat gas. Nat gas did have a little bit of a down day today, but you notice it is confirming now beneath this trend line. So now that makes this trend line resistance. So it should be difficult for it to get back up into this area. My eyes are now targeting $3.38 for support, followed by the $3.13 area here on the charts for nat gas. 10-year yield also did pull back just a little bit. You would anticipate the markets to go up a little bit more, but all in all, the last few days, sideways consolidation, mainly wanting to target this trend line. If we break above that trend line, the game changes. If we stay underneath it, all is well in the markets. Into the US dollar. We haven't covered the US dollar in a while, but I did want to bring this to your attention as we did have an attempt to break out of this declining trend today, but it got rejected. And it got rejected by two different trend lines. You notice this trend line that it ran into that's more of a horizontal trend line was from the pivot low in July of 2023, strung across all the way to the very next pivot here in September of 2024. And that area is currently the line in the sand for the dollar to beat. So the bad news is the dollar did not rip higher above this trend line. The good news is it's another hit of this trend line, weakening that area for another attack would likely increase the percentage chance of it breaking through. Now into some earnings. We had Best Buy earnings this morning, and you can see here, this is what happens when price breaks trend, much like what we've seen on Bitcoin. So price was consolidating and moving higher up on this particular trend on Best Buy. Today with the news that they're cutting guidance for this year, mainly due to tariffs. And all in all, keep in mind too, guys, this is all up in the air. The directive from this administration, obviously, is to tamper down on these tariffs, make it so it's more fair on both sides for each country. But with the tariffs now potentially being paused, this is somewhat of a buying signal for Best Buy. Not in the clear yet, and I'm going to show you some good levels to watch in the near future. Here back into the Best Buy chart, notice how I've got a collection of trend lines down here at the bottom. If I scroll back and show you where those are originating from, there's a collection of 3 different trend lines. One all the way back in 2013 up to the most recent pivot. Then over here from December of 2018 over here to March of 2020, the COVID lows right down here at the bottom end of the chart. And then we have a third trend line from the pivot low of October of 22 down to the most recent pivot. So that tells me that this range here is basically like a spider web collecting the support area for price on Best Buy. If we do have price action continue to sell off on Best Buy, the first area of support will be this top trend line right around $56, followed by the second trend line at $54.10, and then ultimately down here at $49.46. All of that area should be a great area to buy for a long swing trade on Best Buy. So keep that on the radar. Into HPQ. HPQ also did drop here on earnings. You can see here they did miss on earnings per share, but they beat on revenue. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag. Price action did decline, though, ultimately bounced up initially right from the open. Price action was a little bit lower this morning, got down into the $23 range before the market opened. And then once the market opened, it really didn't turn back. It just kept going higher. So this may lead HPQ to further gains in the near term. However, we've got to monitor major support areas on the charts, one of which is derived here from this trend line back in March of 2020. Strung through the most recent pivot low in April. And then right here on that trend line would be a great area for support for a near-term bounce on HPQ if price continues lower. Now that price area on the trend line is right at $21.54. Into Uber. And we saw Uber here, and this is one fascinating thing to look at as well with these parallels, how they work, how price action reacts when it gets to the top end, when it gets to the bottom end. It's really a lot of information is displayed here in these parallels. So most recently, though, Uber had a fantastic move off this April low pivot, and it pierced through the top end of this parallel channel. And as you notice here, though, we did not confirm above this parallel channel. And what happens when we don't confirm? That leaves the stock price vulnerable for decline, which it's doing right now. Now, today we had a decent fall on Uber, down 4.49%. It did catch support right here with all of these pivots and price action that consolidated in this area towards the beginning of May. But if selling pressure resumes and continues, this next area of support is going to be down here near $77, formed by this declining trend line that connects to a pivot high here, as well as pivots and also a pause in price action. So with price, especially if Uber comes straight down into that area over the next few trading days, I would be very interested in a near-term and short-term long on Uber, as that should provide significant support. Into Nvidia. As we said, Nvidia had great earnings yesterday. They did double beat here on earnings per share and also on revenue. But then what did price do today? We gapped up and then we just sold off most of the day. Now we did close above this resistance area, which is near-term positive for Nvidia, but we need to confirm above this bull flag pattern. Has not yet been accomplished. So we'll see if we can't get a close tomorrow or in the coming trading days just above this pivot high that was created today at 143.49. If that occurs, this measured move is the next target right at 151.71. But if the market starts seeing selling pressure overall, this trend line at the bottom end of this parallel will be support in the near term, right around 128.15. So watch tomorrow's close. That should really help guide us as to if we're going to be moving higher on Nvidia or starting to come back down, maybe even consolidating again, potentially tagging that lower end of the parallel channel. Now, into one stock that did start falling today, finally, this stock with Netflix. Now, it didn't have a big drop. This is only down 1.96%. But again, back to the technicals. We have a really long-term inclining parallel channel here on the charts. As we see on the charts, since April, Netflix has just done everything to move higher, and it's done so very successfully, but it's ran up into the top end of this parallel. And notice too, on the top end of the parallel, we did not confirm above the parallel. So that told us with yesterday's price action, we're still vulnerable for a sell-off, but sell-off occurred and it caught support right here where all this chop is. So not a big fall yet for Netflix. We'll see if this selling pressure continues in the near future. If so, I've got a support level here on this inclining trend line, roughly around $1,100 that should catch price and provide a near-term bounce on that stock. Into AVGO. Now, this is a stock that did move above this bull flag and confirm above the bull flag. But much like the Netflix chart, look at this parallel channel and look at the resistance area that AVGO kissed today. It didn't tag this trend line, but it got so close. And that's something to remember in technical analysis. Oftentimes, our levels, trend lines, they get pierced by a little bit, but then sometimes they fall short just by a little bit too. These trend lines and parallels guide us to anticipate when resistance is about to be applied on that stock. And as we see here with AVGO, price action was moving right up into that resistance area and then began to pull back a little bit. And if you look further back on the chart, you can also see right here with this doji that price action today filled that gap. So that gap fill would have been resistance and the top end of this parallels resistance. So we had two factors that were pushing price back down on AVGO. All the while, though, AVGO did close up higher than yesterday's candle, so it did have a good push higher on the stock. So if you were an AVGO bull, what you want to see happen is price to consolidate right up here, and then it has an opportunity to break this inclining parallel channel and move to the measured move at 261.31, which would be brand new all-time highs for this stock. All right, so that wraps up trading to close. Guys, thank you so much for watching and tuning in today. Look forward to bringing you guys some more info next week. Can't believe Thursday is here already. You guys have a great one. I'll be back out here on Monday. Take care.